We've built a great community here at Do the Math. All the questions that you left for us on YouTube inspired us to do an AMA on Reddit, and I wanted to take the opportunity to address some of those questions directly. Let's start with probably the most important question we got, which is, who won, Drake or Kendrick Lamar? Kendrick Lamar, all day. Okay, so in all seriousness, one of the questions we got was about housing. Do I think that housing will become more affordable in the years to come? And is there any role for government to try to help housing affordability? It's such a hard question because housing is such a mess. I mean, housing affordability is horrible for almost everybody. Our companies are more profitable today than they have been in a long time. In the early 1990s, profit margins at the big US companies were about a third of what they are now. So what that means is companies do have the money to pay their workers more if they want. And if they wanted to take the view that they should pay them at least as much as it takes to be able for them to afford housing, that's a worthwhile investment in the workforce. But I think there's another thing going on, which is there's been a massive investment in commercial real estate for decades in this country. And if you think about the big cities, they're ordered around clusters of commercial buildings. I think an older generation of corporate leaders are used to people being in an office 5 days a week, are used to the relationships and the ordering that entails, and they want to recreate that world. I think that world is gone forever, and I think it's going to take time for them to get used to it. A lot of people who are investors in commercial properties are going to lose money. And so it's not surprising that commercial property investors have gone into this new world kicking and screaming. But I think what the current trends are telling you is that it's not reversible, and they're going to have to accept the fact that that world is not coming back. In terms of what governments can do, one thing that comes to mind is they can give tax breaks or tax incentives. We're already starting to see conversions from commercial real estate to residential. In the fall of 2023, the Biden administration announced incentives for conversions. And more recently, in January, a record number of residential units had been converted from commercial. It's still probably a drop in the bucket. We're talking about a massive sea of commercial real estate, but it's starting to move in the right direction, and I'm hopeful that that will be part of a larger wave of commercial to residential changes. Another question we got was about whether a financial collapse is imminent, because the national debt is going up at a fast pace, and the Fed has printed a lot of money since the pandemic. There's always a crisis coming. We just don't know what that crisis is going to be and when it's going to come. That doesn't stop people from going out there and trying to predict an imminent financial collapse. Why do they do that? I think part of it is entertainment. People want to hear about collapses, and part of it is for clickbait. But the thing you have to ask yourself is, who is putting their money behind the idea of a collapse? And that's where it gets a little dicier, because it's very difficult to make money betting on collapses. For example, Michael Burry and John Paulson famously made huge bets against the housing market in the run-up to the financial crisis. Everyone thought they were crazy, but even the ones that agreed with them thought they were crazy to bet the kind of money they did. And what that speaks to is the difficulty, even if you know that a crisis is coming, of timing it correctly. It's the nameless, faceless sea of people who have made a ton of money on a rising stock market for the last 100 years that you don't hear about, but they are the overwhelming majority. So in general, I think that the fiscal and monetary stimulus, printing money, let's say, was necessary during the pandemic. Maybe we could have done a little bit less of it, but the after effects, in my opinion, have been relatively mild, and we're moving to fix them. I think the Fed is serious about getting back to its 2% target. Inflation is running at about 3+% now, but it's way down from 9+% that it was after the pandemic. And I think over the long term, they are not going to cause major problems to the economy or the financial system. So my advice is bet on prosperity, bet for the long term, and just live with the fact that every once in a while you're going to have a crisis, and it will pass, and we will move on to prosperity again. By the way, we did a video on the national debt and how to think about whether it's too high or not high enough, the various things that you could look at to make that determination, so check that out. Another question we got from a Reddit user is about the generational wealth inequality. The boomers, let's face it, have all the money. Once you have money, it's easier to make money, and so is that generational wealth gap growing in favor of the boomers? What are the impacts of that, and does it eventually reverse itself or correct itself. You know, they happened to be working at a time when interest rates went from record highs to record lows, which meant that if you owned bonds, you made out like a bandit. And they also lived through one of the biggest stock bull markets in history. Starting in the late 1970s and 1980s, US stocks were very cheap. They went on a 40-year bull market. Oh, and by the way, housing. In the 1970s and 1980s, housing relative to income was a lot cheaper than it is today. And housing benefited from lower interest rates, and it just boomed. So pretty much if you were a boomer, anything you owned turned to gold. I mean, you didn't have to be very discriminating. If you had any assets in your hands, the value of those assets not just went up, they skyrocketed. But also, it's not clear how much money is gonna come down to the next generation from the boomers. I've seen estimates that are as high as 50 trillion, $100 trillion. I've also seen people say that the boomers will spend a lot of the money during their lifetime, especially since life expectancy is going up, and that people won't inherit much. But I think you have a bigger problem, and that is that even if you do inherit, you probably will not inherit until you're a lot older. And that money is way less useful to you when you're 70 than it is when you're 30 or 40, starting a family, trying to buy a home. One thing that we could do is we could give boomers a break for money, a tax break for money they passed down today. The way the law works now is you can give any person $18,000 a year tax-free, and then once you pass on, you can give someone money tax-free up to a certain hurdle. That hurdle is going to change over time. Right now it's more, there's a sunset in a few years, it'll be less. That number is not important. My suggestion though is that we say to people, we will allow you to do that tax-free as an incentive to get the money rolling today from the rich boomers to the less rich millennials and Gen Z. Thanks for tuning in and sending your questions. If you found this discussion helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and catch our next video about the GOAT of finance.